So as we can see that this student here has got a D star DD even though he has one of the grades there as unclassified, and that is just wrong. How do we fix this problem? Um, so looking at the code here, the code that we printed out in the console, um, the whole code shouldn't be really executed after this point. Like we entered all the grades. One of the grades was equal to 0, so the code should stop executing after this point. So we need to have a conditional statement, an if statement. I guess you're all familiar with if statements from last year, from when we were doing Python. The way this works is, right, so before we even find out the total, we should put a condition here. So before we add all those grades together and store them in the total variable, we should have a condition here. So if any of those items there equals 0, then don't execute that code. So let me just show you how we do an if statement in JavaScript. So we really need the for loop here again, so because we're gonna iterate over the whole list to check for every single item here in the list if it does equal 0 or not. So we're going to have a for loop, and then within that loop we're going to have an if statement every time we loop through that loop. So for I equals 1. Now since it's a list, so we start from 0, because as we said before, the first item of the list always equals 0. And then I all the way up to 18. Then I plus plus. And everything inside the loop should be indented. And then here we have the if condition, again with parentheses. If grades I, so that's checking the ith item in that grades array. If it does equal 0, so when we're checking if it does equal 0 or not, we put double equals, because we're not assigning the 0 to the variable, we're just checking if it's 0 or not. So double equals, it means check if it does equal 0. And then again we need to have curly brackets there. If it does equal 0, well, we should have a variable declared there. Call that variable, I don't know, zeros, just to check if there's any zeros in the list, and set it to false. So that means any zeros in the list? No, that's false. Here we just, if it does equal 0, we just change that variable. So we call it zeros equals true. And then just break out of the list, out of the loop. Why do we break out of the loop? Because after we loop through those many times there, we reached here, this does equal 0, that's it. Like you don't really need to check the rest of the elements in the list. They're not going to make any difference, like, because once you failed one unit, that's it. You don't have to look at the other units. You failed the whole year. So we break the loop, and we don't really need to check the rest of the elements. Now, after we loop through the whole loop 18 different times, let's check if the zeros is still false as it was before we looped through the loop 18 times, or has it been changed to true? If zeros again equals true, false, then execute all that code there. So that's just saying if there's no zeros in that list, there's no unclassified grades in that list, then execute all that code. Otherwise, don't execute it. Just do something else. So here we need an else statement for the other case where the zeros is actually equal to true because there's actually a zero in the list. So in this case, we just output, let me just change that, copy, paste, copy and paste this as well. So just change those to, I don't know, something like no UCAS points awarded. Same thing here, no BTEC grades awarded. So again, let me just quickly go through the code that we just wrote right now. We created a list, we looped through it 18 different times to store all those variables, all those options that of the drop-down menus. We output that grade list, and then we checked if there was any zeros in that array, in that list. And if there is any zeros, if there's no zeros in that list, then execute that code, find out the total and the grades and the points and everything. And otherwise just output no UCAS points, no BTEC grades awarded. Hopefully that will work. So these are all merits. Let's try with a few distinctions. There you go. So it was DMM, now it's DDM. Let's try one of them unclassified. And there you have it. No UCAS points awarded, no BTEC grades awarded. And as you can see here, the code only reached up to here. It only found out the list of the grades, and once it found out that one of the grades equal to 0, it stopped executing the rest of the code, and therefore those lines there were not executed at all. And so that problem is now solved.